Hello there, and welcome to this quiet moment, a gentle pause as the world outside settles into slumber and we prepare to drift into the soft embrace of history. Tonight, our journey takes us back to an age of thundering hooves and gleaming steel to explore the captivating story of ancient times when noble horses carried riders armed with formidable lances, a symbol of power and chivalry that echoed through the ages. So let your body grow heavy, your breath slow, and even as we venture into the world of knights, their valiant steeds, and the long piercing lances they wielded with such skill and courage, painting a picture of a truly remarkable era. Our tale begins long before the knight in shining armor became a familiar image, with early horsemen discovering the profound advantage of fighting from an elevated position, a mobile platform that offered speed and striking power. The invention of the stirrup, likely originating in Asia and slowly making its way westward, was a pivotal moment, granting riders unprecedented stability and allowing them to use their weapons with far greater force without being unseated. Alongside the stirrup, the development of a more structured saddle, with a higher cantle and pommel, further anchored the rider, transforming the horse and warrior into a unified fighting unit capable of delivering focused, powerful thrusts. Early lances were often simpler, perhaps more akin to long spears, used for throwing or for overhand or underhand thrusts, requiring immense strength but lacking the specialized technique that would later define lance warfare. These first mounted warriors, often from noble or wealthy families who could afford the expense of a warhorse, and its upkeep, began to form the nucleus of an elite fighting force in many societies across Europe and beyond. The very presence of a charging horseman was a terrifying sight for infantry soldiers on the ground, the sheer momentum and height advantage creating a psychological impact that could break formations even before contact was made. Gradually, as armor for both rider and horse improved, from leather and mail to eventually full plate, the role of the mounted warrior became more specialized, evolving into the figure we recognize as the knight. The horses themselves were not just any steeds. They were often specially bred and rigorously trained for the rigors of battle, becoming prized possessions and trusted companions, their strength and spirit essential for carrying an armored warrior and weathering the chaos of combat. This early period laid the groundwork, developing the core skills, equipment, and societal structures that would allow the lance-wielding knight to dominate the battlefields of the High Middle Ages for centuries. The lance, even in its earlier forms, began to symbolize martial prowess, a direct extension of the warrior's reach and a formidable weapon that demanded respect and instilled fear in adversaries. As we move into the heart of the medieval period, the knight emerged in full splendor, encased in articulated plate armor that offered remarkable protection while still allowing for a degree of movement. The lance of this era became a highly specialized weapon, typically a long, sturdy shaft of wood, such as ash, tipped with a sharp steel head, designed specifically for the devastating impact of a cavalry charge. The technique of the couched lance was perfected, where the lance was held horizontally under the armpit, braced against the body, transforming the combined momentum of horse and rider into a single, focused point of immense kinetic energy. War horses, often called destriers, were powerful animals bred for strength and courage and frequently adorned with their own armor, known as barding, protecting their vulnerable heads, necks, and bodies. The ideals of chivalry, a complex code of conduct emphasizing bravery, honor, loyalty, and the protection of the weak, became deeply intertwined with the image of the knight, though the reality often varied. The journey to knighthood was a long and arduous one, typically beginning as a page in a noble household, then progressing to a squire, learning the arts of war, horsemanship, and courtly manners before finally receiving the accolade. In battle, the knight's primary role was the shock charge, aimed at shattering enemy infantry formations or engaging enemy cavalry, with the lance being the weapon of choice for this initial, decisive impact. tournaments and jousts became popular, offering knights a chance to display their skills, courage, and horsemanship in a more controlled, albeit still dangerous, environment, with the lance taking center stage. The lance itself was more than just a weapon. It was a powerful symbol of status, a mark of the knightly class, its length and visibility on the battlefield making its wielder a prominent figure. Heraldry, the system of coats of arms and distinctive emblems, adorned the knight's shield, surcoat, and sometimes even the horse's barding, allowing for identification amidst the chaos of battle or the pageantry of a tournament. Maintaining a knight was a significant undertaking, requiring a retinue that might include squires to assist with armor, and weapons, grooms for the horses, and access to skilled armorers and blacksmiths. While the lance was paramount for the charge, knights also carried swords, maces, axes, and daggers for the ensuing melee combat that inevitably followed once lances were broken or formations engaged. The social standing of a knight was typically high, often tied to land ownership granted in exchange for military service, a cornerstone of the feudal system that structured medieval society. Imagine the spectacle of a line of fully armored knights, their polished steel gleaming, colorful banners fluttering from their lances, their powerful war horses eager for the signal to advance. The sounds associated with them were equally evocative: the rhythmic clatter of armor, the snorting of horses, the thundering of hooves, and the sharp crack of lances splintering upon impact. This was the golden age of the lance-wielding knight, a figure who dominated warfare and captured the imagination with their blend of martial prowess and idealized virtues. The psychological effect of seeing a disciplined formation of knights, lances lowered, advancing at a gallop was often enough to cause less resolute opponents to break and flee. The lance required immense skill not only to wield effectively, but also to manage while controlling a powerful warhorse at speed, all while encased in restrictive armor. Training for lance combat began at a young age, with exercises like riding at the quinton, a practice target, to hone accuracy and the ability to absorb the shock of impact. When the lance was put to use in a joust, it was a thrilling display of individual skill, where two knights would charge each other along a barrier known as a tilt. The objective was often to strike the opponent's shield squarely with the lance, aiming to break the lance or, more dramatically, to unhorse the adversary, a feat met with great applause. Special tournament lances, sometimes with blunted or coronal heads 3 or for small prongs, were used to reduce the risk of fatal injury, though jousting remained a perilous sport. In warfare, the coordinated lance charge was a fearsome tactic. A wedge or line of knights hitting an enemy formation with concentrated force could punch a hole right through it. The initial moments of such a charge were crucial, the knights striving to maintain their cohesion and momentum to maximize the devastating impact of their lances upon the enemy ranks. Once a lance was shattered or dropped after the initial impact, or if the charge failed to break the enemy, knights would draw their swords or other close combat weapons to continue the fight. Many famous medieval battles saw knightly charges with lances play a significant, sometimes decisive, role, shaping the course of conflicts and the destiny of kingdoms. The length of a war lance could be considerable, often 12 to 15 feet, giving the mounted knight a significant reach advantage over soldiers on foot. The sheer force delivered by a couched lance was enough to pierce armor and shields, often unhorsing or incapacitating an opponent in a single, powerful blow. The preparation for a charge was a moment of intense focus, each knight ensuring their grip, their seat, and their alignment, knowing the success of the maneuver depended on collective precision. The camaraderie among knights, forged in training, tournaments, and the crucible of battle, was a powerful bond, though fierce rivalries also existed, sometimes played out in the jousting arena. Even in siege warfare, where lances were less directly applicable against fortifications, knights formed the core of the attacking or defending forces, their leadership and fighting skills invaluable. The sight of sunlight glinting off a forest of lowered lance points as knights prepared to charge must have been both magnificent and terrifying to behold for those awaiting the impact. The lance, therefore, was not just a piece of wood and steel, but the very embodiment of the knight's offensive power, a tool of shock and awe on the medieval battlefield. The ground would tremble under the combined weight and speed of charging warhorses, a sound that heralded the imminent, violent clash of arms and men. However, as centuries passed, the supremacy of the lance-wielding knight on the battlefield began to face new and formidable challenges that would gradually diminish its dominance. The development and proliferation of powerful longbows, particularly in the hands of skilled English archers and later crossbows, could unleash volleys of projectiles capable of piercing even good quality armor at a distance. Infantry tactics also evolved to counter the knightly charge, with disciplined formations of men wielding long pikes or setting up sharpened stakes, creating impenetrable barriers for charging horses. Pivotal battles like Crécy in 1346 and Agincourt in 1415 starkly demonstrated the vulnerability of even the most courageous mounted knights to well-positioned archers and disciplined infantry. The increasing sophistication and weight of plate armor designed to protect against these new threats also made knights and their horses slower and less mobile and more exhausting to fight in. The advent of early firearms, though initially crude and slow to reload, introduced a new type underscore of projectile weapon that could penetrate armor with even greater ease, further shifting the balance of power. The immense cost associated with equipping and maintaining a fully armored knight and warhorse also meant that their numbers were often limited, while infantry armies could be raised more readily. Warfare began to rely more heavily on large formations of trained infantry and the burgeoning power of gunpowder artillery, reducing the decisive impact of the cavalry charge in many situations. The lance, while still used by some cavalry units, began to transition from the primary weapon of shock assault to a more specialized tool, or even a ceremonial one. Jousting, however, continued as a popular sport and a display of aristocratic martial skill long after the lance's peak military utility had passed, preserving its chivalric associations. The romantic ideal of the knight with his lance, celebrated in songs, poems, and epic tales, ensured that the image endured in the cultural imagination even as battlefield realities changed. Armorers continued to craft magnificent suits of plate, some incredibly ornate, but these became more symbols of status and tournament gear than practical battlefield protection against new weapons. Gradually, the sight of entire formations of knights relying on the lance as their principal weapon became rarer, replaced by more diverse military strategies and technologies. The legacy of the knightly code of chivalry, however, with its emphasis on honor and duty, continued to influence military traditions and ethical considerations in warfare for generations. The thundering charge of lancers, once the ultimate expression of battlefield supremacy, slowly faded into the annals of military history, a poignant symbol of a transformative era. The very landscape of Europe, dotted with castles and ancient battlefields, still whispers tales of these mounted warriors and the age when the lance reigned supreme. Yet, the echo of the lance did not entirely disappear. It resonated through time, finding new expressions and maintaining its symbolic power long after its military heyday. In some modern ceremonial cavalry units, lances are still carried, a graceful nod to a proud martial heritage, connecting the present with the traditions of the past. The lance continues to appear in heraldry, on coats of arms and flags, a shorthand for nobility, strength, and a connection to a chivalric lineage, real or aspirational. Stories and legends, from Arthurian romances to tales of valiant crusaders, kept the image of the knight with his trusty lance vividly alive in popular culture, inspiring art and literature. This figure became an archetype of adventure, of righteous combat, and of an idealized form of martial virtue, capturing the imagination of successive generations. Our enduring fascination with this period, with its gleaming armor, powerful war horses, and the dramatic clash of lances, speaks to a deep appreciation for its unique blend of artistry and warfare. We can reflect on the incredible skill required to master the lance and horse, the immense bravery to charge into the fray, and the complex world that produced such warriors. The horse, that constant companion, shared in the glory and the danger, its strength and loyalty an indispensable part of the knight's identity and effectiveness in these bygone days. The quiet fields and meadows where such momentous charges once took place now lie peaceful, holding the silent memories of thundering hooves and the splintering of countless lances. The lance, therefore, serves as a poignant reminder of an era when individual prowess and the power of the mounted charge could dramatically shape the course of history and define an age. It speaks of a time when the world moved at the pace of a horse, and the clash of steel was a familiar sound in the pursuit of honor, duty, or dominion. The intricate dance of horse and rider, culminating in the focused power of the lance, was a spectacle of disciplined force that left an indelible mark on human conflict. Even as warfare evolved, the spirit of the lancer, that bold, forward-driving impetus, found echoes in later cavalry tactics and the ethos of offensive military action. The craftsmanship involved in creating a well-balanced lance, strong enough for impact yet manageable for the rider, was a testament to the specialized skills of medieval artisans. And so, the story of the horse and lance is one of innovation, of martial evolution, and of a powerful cultural symbol that continues to captivate our minds. As the night deepens and the stars shine softly above, perhaps you can almost hear the distant echo of hooves, a gentle rhythm carrying you towards peaceful dreams. May this journey into the age of lances and chivalry bring a sense of calm and wonder as you drift into a restful and serene sleep.
Good evening, and welcome to a quiet moment as the world outside settles. A time for us to drift back and explore a simpler, more connected way of life. Tonight, we journey to the year 1900 to imagine the lives of farming families, their hands, in the earth, cultivating the food that sustained them through the turning seasons. Let us picture the rhythm of their days, the honest toil and the deep satisfaction found in working the land, a world powered by muscle, tradition, and the unwavering cycle of nature. As the last frosts of winter reluctantly gave way, a new energy stirred across the fields, a sense of anticipation for the demanding work of spring that lay just ahead. The farmer, perhaps named Thomas, would rise before the sun, the chill air still sharp. His first thoughts turning to the condition of his soil and the tasks awaiting his strong hands, he'd consult his almanac, a trusted guide filled with weather predictions and planting wisdom passed down through generations, its pages worn soft from countless consultations. The heavy plow, often a single furrow implement pulled by sturdy draft horses like Bess and Captain, was meticulously checked, its iron share sharpened ready to break the earth. Out in the fields, the rhythmic plod of hooves and the creak of leather harnesses accompanied the steady turning of rich, dark soil, revealing the promise of fertility beneath. The scent of damp earth, freshly disturbed, filled the air, a primal perfume signaling the true beginning of the agricultural year. A scent of hope and hard work, manure carefully collected from the livestock throughout the winter, was spread across the fields. A natural fertilizer essential for replenishing the soil's vital nutrients for the coming crops. Younger members of the family, children with nimble fingers, would follow behind, clearing stones turned up by the plow, their small contributions vital to the farm's success. Seed potatoes, each with a promising eye, were carefully cut and laid out in shallow furrows, a staple crop that would see them through the leaner months ahead. Grain, perhaps wheat or oats, was broadcast by hand, the sower walking with a measured gait, scattering the precious seeds in wide, even arcs across the prepared ground. The kitchen garden, closer to the farmhouse, received special attention, with neat rows of peas, beans, carrots, and onions being planted by the women of the household. These gardens were a source of daily sustenance, providing fresh vegetables for the table and herbs for both culinary and medicinal uses throughout the entire year. The orchard, too, was inspected, the fruit trees pruned with care to encourage a bountiful harvest of apples, pears, or plums later in the year, their blossoms a welcome sight. Every task was performed with a deep understanding of the land, an intimate knowledge of its moods and capabilities, learned through years of observation and experience. As spring unfurled into early summer, the fields transformed into a vibrant tapestry of greens, the tender shoots emerging, a testament to the earlier labors and hopeful prayers. The sun climbed higher each day, its warmth coaxing life from the soil, but also bringing the relentless challenge of weeds that competed for water and nutrients. Days were spent hoeing, a back-aching task, meticulously removing thistles, dandelions, and other unwelcome plants from between the rows of growing crops, ensuring their healthy development. The corn, planted in neat hills, grew taller, its broad leaves rustling in the gentle breezes, promising a sweet harvest later in the season if all went well. Young livestock, calves and lambs born in the spring, frolicked in the pastures, growing stronger under the watchful eyes of their mothers and the farm family. The dairy cows were milked twice a day by hand, the warm milk strained into pails, a portion destined for the family table, the rest for making butter and cheese. Haymaking was a crucial summer activity, the tall grasses cut with long, sharp scythes, the rhythmic swish of familiar sound echoing across the meadows under the hot sun. Once cut, the hay was turned and raked, allowing it to dry thoroughly in the sun before being gathered into large stacks or loaded onto wagons to be stored in the barn. This dried hay would be vital fodder for the animals during the long, cold winter months, ensuring their survival when the pastures were bare or covered in snow. The community often came together for tasks like haymaking or harvesting. Neighbors, helping neighbors, sharing the workload and the camaraderie, strengthening social bonds. Children carried water to the workers in the fields, their small legs scurrying, eager to play their part in the collective effort, learning the ways of the farm. The buzzing of bees amongst the clover and wildflowers was a constant melody, these tiny pollinators essential for the fruit trees and many of the vegetable crops. Evenings brought a welcome respite, the family gathering on the porch as twilight descended, the air filled with the chirping of crickets and the scent of honeysuckle. Stories were shared, songs were sung, and plans for the next day's work were quietly discussed. A peaceful end to a day of strenuous, yet rewarding, physical labor. As summer's heat began to wane, the first golden tints of autumn appeared, signaling the approach of harvest, the culmination of the year's efforts and anxieties. The fields of grain stood tall and ripe, their heavy heads nodding in the breeze, a beautiful sight that promised sustenance and security for the coming year. Harvesting the grain was an intensive period, often starting at dawn, with men wielding scythes or, on more prosperous farms, using horse-drawn reapers to cut the stalks. Women and older children followed behind, gathering the cut grain into bundles called sheaves, which were then tied securely with twisted stalks of the grain itself. These sheaves were propped together in stooks, resembling small tents in the field, allowing the grain to dry further before being transported to the threshing floor. Threshing, the process of separating the grain from the chaff and straw, might be done with flails on a barn floor or with a steam-powered threshing machine if available. The rhythmic thud of flails or the chugging hum of the thresher filled the air, a sound of bounty as the precious kernels were finally released and collected. Potatoes were dug from the earth, their earthy scent a hallmark of autumn, each tuber carefully gathered and sorted, destined for the root cellar's cold darkness. Apples, pears, and plums were picked from the laden branches of the orchard trees, their sweet fragrance mingling with the crisp autumn air, a delightful sensory experience. Pumpkins and squash, with their vibrant oranges and yellows, were gathered from the fields, adding to the colorful array of the season's plentiful harvest. The farmhouse kitchen became a hive of activity, with preserving taking center stage. Fruits were made into jams and jellies, vegetables pickled or canned for winter. Corn cobs were husked, the dried kernels stored away, some for animal feed, some for grinding into cornmeal, a versatile staple in their diet. There was a profound sense of satisfaction in seeing the barns and cellars gradually fill, a tangible reward for months of hard work, dedication, and hope. Harvest festivals or community suppers were common, a time for celebration, gratitude, and sharing the abundance with neighbors, fostering a strong sense of unity. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, the last of the crops were brought in, and the fields were prepared for their winter rest, awaiting the return of spring. Plowing might be done again in the fall, turning over the stubble to expose the soil to the winter frosts, which helped to break it down and control pests. Tools were cleaned, mended, and stored away carefully, ready for the next season, their wooden handles smooth from use, their metal parts oiled against rust. Firewood, cut and stacked throughout the warmer months, was brought closer to the house, ensuring a warm hearth during the cold days and nights that lay ahead. Livestock were moved into barns or sheltered enclosures, their winter feed of hay and stored. Grains carefully rationed to last until spring grazing was possible again. The pace of life flowed considerably with the arrival of winter, the land lying dormant under a blanket of frost or snow, a period of quiet reflection. Inside the farmhouse, the warmth of the stove or fireplace created a cozy haven against the harshness of the elements, a focal point for family life. Women busied themselves with indoor tasks like spinning wool into yarn, weaving cloth for clothes and blankets, or quilting to provide warmth and comfort. Men might spend time repairing harnesses, crafting wooden items, or tending to the animals, their outdoor work limited by the weather and shorter daylight hours. Children, when not helping with chores, might attend a local one-room schoolhouse, or spend time reading, playing quiet games, or listening to stories by the fire. The pantry shelves, lined with jars of preserved fruits and vegetables, were a comforting sight, a testament to the foresight and industry of the past seasons. Smoked meats hung in the smokehouse or cellar, and sacks of flour and meal were stored securely, ensuring the family would be well fed throughout the winter months. There was a sense of peace in this lower season, a time for recuperation after the intense labor of planting and harvesting, a necessary pause in the agricultural cycle. Plans for the next year's crops would begin to form, discussions about which fields to rotate, what seeds to purchase, and any improvements to be made. The connection to the land was profound, an intimate relationship built on respect, hard work, and a deep understanding of nature's rhythms and its bounty.